Okay, so you guys have in front of you is the paper that says Introduction Argumentative Essay. So it looks like this, right? So we are going to go ahead and look at it together so I can go over a few things. So your argumentative essay must include a claim or a thesis. This is just for your introduction. This is for almost any type of academic writing that you do moving forward, unless it's a personal narrative. So your claim or your thesis statement is actually the same thing. A thesis statement is in any other type of writing. Remember, a thesis statement is what your entire paper is about. Whereas your claim in argumentative writing is what are you claiming, which is what your thesis statement is, because your claim is what the entire paper is about. Does that make sense? So claim/thesis statement, when it comes to argumentative, actually can be interchangeable. You are going to start with a hook. Start with a hook. So a hook is an interesting question. That's kind of blurry, isn't it? Let me take another picture. See if I can get one that's not as blurry.
That's pretty clear.
Yeah, that's way better, isn't it? Let's try this again. I just got to spin her around a little bit. The other way. There we go. Now I can do some markup on it. Can you guys read that better?
Yep.
Way better, huh? All right. So you want to start with, okay, guys, I have to read like 65, 70 of these essays. Do you think if I start reading your essay and it's super, super, super boring, I'm going to be engaged and give you a good grade?
No.
Probably not, right? I can tell you right now that if I start reading and you don't catch my attention right away, I'm going to start noticing your grammar errors, your spelling errors, how your sentence structure is not correct, how you didn't do something else. I'm going to notice those things because I'm not really interested in what you're saying because it's not exciting. Your hook is what's going to get me excited about reading your paper, right? How many of you guys have seen a movie or you've read a book and it starts out and you're like, whoa, I want to know what happens. Okay, that's because it hooks you.
Or
Different types of, or the opposite, right?
yeah.
So different types of hooks. We're going to focus on these 4. The first one is an interesting question. So what gets someone thinking more than asking a question? Not much. So pose an interesting question. Obviously, I'm using animal testing as my example. So my interesting question might be something like, can you imagine if someone took your favorite pet and used it to test medicine on? How would that make you feel? Well, that's going to get me thinking. That would make me feel awful. I love my animal. I don't want him to be a test subject, right? Or can you imagine being trapped in a cage and being poked and prodded just to see how you react? Well, no, that would be terrible, right? So that gets somebody thinking. That's that hook, gets them thinking. The next one is a strong statement or declaration. You're not like, yeah, animal testing is bad. That's not very strong. Animal testing needs to be banned now. That's a strong statement. You're saying something with conviction. You really feel it. You have emotion. Avoid using an exclamation point in argumentative writing just because it's not very professional. You want to use exclamation points very minimally in academic writing. Personal narratives, stories, things like that, you can use them more often. But when it comes to research and argumentative, you don't want to use exclamations quite as much. You can, like if you want to use it in just your hook, that's fine, but don't use them throughout your whole paper, okay? Use a fact or a statistic, something short and simple. You don't want to introduce a lot of new information in the introduction. The introduction's not for new information. The introduction is to just tell you what's coming in the paper. That's where you're going to get your information. So a fact or a statistic, but it needs to be short and powerful. Short, simple, powerful stat or fact. And then the last one is a quotation from an expert on whatever it is that you're writing about, or a famous person. So that could be kind of fun. Maybe there's a celebrity that's very outspoken against animal testing that I could use a quote from, okay? So you have these different options of how to start a hook. So you're then going to give some background information, but you're not introducing new information. Don't start citing sources and giving me research in the introduction. The only role of the introduction is to tell me what your paper is about. Do not use I. You're stating everything as a fact. I do not want to read one more paper that says, I believe blah, 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 and I'm going to tell you why. No, no one cares. I know you're going to tell me. That's why you wrote the paper, right? Like, you don't need to tell me you're going to tell me. I know you're going to tell me. That's why there's an entire essay. You see what I'm saying? So it's just a waste of words. It's a way to get into sentences, to fill that number of sentences you need, but it's a waste of it's just a waste. It's not telling me anything. You only use I in personal narratives and stories. When you're writing research and academic things, you really want to avoid I unless you are quoting somebody and you're putting exactly what they say. If they say, I believe, well, then you can obviously put it. Does that make sense? But this one's going to be a hard one for a lot of you because a lot of you put in your introduction say, I'm going to tell you about, I'm writing this, and you want to avoid that. That is like, bleh. Don't ever do that ever again anymore. Just like stop doing it now forever, okay? All right, so now I have kind of a short, simple example for you guys to take a look at. And I'm gonna go through it kind of quickly because Mr. Jones's iPad is dying. So, you are obviously not going to put anything in bold or in parentheses. I did so that I could point out to you what as it is an example of. So, testing on animals in the cosmetic and medical industry has been going on for years. That's my hook. What kind of hook is it? It's a strong statement. So I was just pointing that out to you that I have a hook and this is what it is, okay? Animals are used to see how humans may react to certain medications, medical treatments, and chemicals that are found in cosmetics. Animals used in the testing vary. Everything from mice and gerbils to rabbits and monkeys may be found at an animal testing site. Colleges and universities, as well as professional labs, have been known to use animal testing. While there are some laws that help restrict the practice of testing on animals, it is not enough. Again, all animal testing needs to be banned. That is my claim. All animal testing needs to be banned in the United States. That's my claim. So the last thing I put in my introduction is my claim or my thesis. That's just a good rule of thumb moving forward until you become a little bit better of a writer, okay? Always just put it last. All of this is telling what is coming. All of this between the yellow is just background, basic information that is telling the reader what is coming. All right? Does that make sense? So what you are doing with that is you are preparing the reader to know what it is that the story or the essay is going to be about. Yes, Mr. Jones. So the essay is all about animal testing. I know that because that's what my claim, my thesis is. Animals are used to see how humans may react to certain medications, medical treatments, and chemicals that are found in cosmetics. My research that I have, one of my reasons is going to kind of explain that, right? So I'm giving the reader just a glimpse of what's going to come. I'm not giving them any information really, any research, just kind of foreshadowing what's going to come in the paper. Animals used in testing vary. Okay? Everything from mice and gerbils to rabbits and monkeys may be found at an animal testing site. So again, I'm going to talk a little bit about what types of animals they use in my essay. So again, the reader gets a glimpse of what's to come. Colleges and universities, as well as professional labs, have been known to use animal testing. Guess what's coming later in my paper? Why those places use animal testing and how. While there are some laws that help restrict the practice of testing on animals, it's not enough. Guess what I'm going to put in my paper? What laws there are and why those laws aren't enough, right? So I didn't put any research, but I'm giving you, the reader, who may not know anything about animal testing, basic background knowledge and kind of getting you thinking about what the rest of my paper is going to include. Does that make sense? Okay, so you have your hook, then you have basic background information about your topic, and then you have your claim. Now, a lot of people are like, okay, and I say, all right, write your introduction, and then you sit and you stare off, and then I say, hey, what are you doing? I'm thinking. You all know how I feel about that when it comes to writing, and you say, I'm thinking. I hate it, right? I hate when you say that. Because no, you're not. You're staring off in space, and you think you are, but you're not really, right? The hook is oftentimes the hardest part for people because they're trying to be creative and they want it to be awesome. Do the hook last. Do it last. You don't need to do it first. Why? Why can't you go back and add it after you write your paragraph, right? So write your basic background information. Guess what? These sentences, this introduction paragraph, I probably rewrote like 3 or 4 times because I wanted to make sure that it sounded good. So I wrote it all, and then I was like, ooh, I don't like the way that sounds. Oh, I want to reword this. Oh, I want to do this. You can make changes. Doesn't have to be perfect the first time you write it. So write the background information. Put down your claim. And then go back, add, change, make it sound better. Think about what you want as your hook. Maybe as you write down your background information, it'll trigger a thought. Ooh, that would be a good question. Oh, I should include this stat as the first thing because that's really interesting. Oh, you know what? I read that so-and-so celebrity thought that it was fighting for animal rights, and I remember this quote they put. So it might trigger you to think of something that you could use as a hook. So don't be so consumed with, I have to have a good hook, I have to have a good hook, and then you sit and you think for 15 minutes and then you don't have anything down. You can't fix what's not done, right? So if you don't have anything written, can you improve upon it? You can't improve upon something that's not written down. You can't fix it, you can't make it better. So don't look at me for 10 minutes and say, oh, I'm just thinking. Like, no, you're not, okay? Write down some of that background information, get it down on paper. You all know what your claim is. We've talked about it plenty of times. Write down your claim, and you'll probably have more than you think. And then go back and write that hook, okay? So what I want you to do is on the back of the paper that I gave you, on the back of the paper of Argumentative Essay, Introduction, is where you are going to write your introduction. This needs to be done. Your introduction needs to be done. All of your research needs to be done and here, organized on those graphic organizers. And your outline must be done when I see you guys next on Monday or Tuesday, depending on if you're watching this video or not. When I see you next in class. Because we are going to start writing the body paragraphs, and if you don't have your outline with your research, it's going to be much more difficult. We're going to do this in chunks, in pieces. Don't worry about the final copy yet. This is just, you're practicing your introduction on the back of this paper so that we can, when we get done and put it all together, you can see how it flows and start making changes as needed. Okay? Don't lose this. If I were you, you should probably have a folder. You should have a language arts folder that has your introduction page. It has all of the handouts I've given you. It should have your outline, it should have your resources, it should have the example outline. All of the things that I've given you should be in the same space so that you know exactly where it's at when you need it. Because you will need it the next time I see you. So practice, write the best introduction you can. It doesn't have to be perfect. On the back of the paper I gave you, the sample I gave you. Any questions? Thumbs up if you're good, thumbs down if you're like, I have no idea what you're talking about, Mrs. I.